Mrs. Riley saw again the horrible, coffee-stained lumber jacket that she had always secretly wanted to give to the Volunteers of America, along with several other pieces of Ignatius's favorite clothing. You see, I was so overwhelmed by the complete grossness of that spurious chairman that I ran from his office in the middle of one of his cretinous ramblings and rushed to the nearest bathroom, which turned out to be the one for faculty men. At any rate, I was seated in one of the booths, having rested the lumber jacket on top of the door of the booth. Suddenly, I saw the jacket being whisked over the door. I heard footsteps. Then the door of the restroom closed. At the moment, I was unable to pursue the shameless thief, so I began to scream. Someone entered the bathroom and knocked at the door. It turned out to be a member of the campus security force, or so he said. Through the door, I explained what had just happened. He promised to find the jacket and went away. Actually, as I have mentioned to you before, I have always suspected that he and the chairman were the same person. Their voices sounded somewhat similar. You sure can't trust nobody nowadays, honey. As soon as I could, I fled from the bathroom, eager only to get away from that horrible place. Of course, I was almost frozen, standing on that desolate campus, trying to hail a taxi. I finally got one that agreed to take me to New Orleans for $40, and the driver was selfless enough to lend me his jacket. By the time we arrived here, however, he was quite depressed about losing his license and had grown rather surly. He also appeared to be developing a bad cold, judging by the frequency of his sneezes. After all, we were on the highway for almost 2 hours. I think I could drink another beer, Ignatius. Mother, in this forsaken place? Just one, baby. Come on, I want another. We're probably catching something from these glasses. However, if you're quite determined about the thing, get me a brandy, will you? Mrs. Riley signaled to the bartender, who came out of the shadows and asked, what happened to you on that bus, bud? I didn't get the rest of the story. Will you kindly tend the bar properly? Ignatius asked. It is your duty to silently serve when we call upon you. If we had wished to include you in our conversation, we would have indicated it by now. As a matter of fact, we are discussing rather urgent personal matters. The man's just trying to be nice, Ignatius. Shame on you. That in itself is a contradiction in terms. No one could possibly be nice in a den like this. We want 2 more beers, 1 beer and 1 brandy, Ignatius corrected. No more clean glasses, the bartender said. Ain't that a shame? Well, we can use the ones we got. The bartender shrugged and went off into the shadows. In the precinct, the old man sat on a bench with the others, mostly shoplifters, who composed the late afternoon hall. He had neatly arranged along his thigh his social security card, his membership card in the St. Odo of Cluny Holy Name Society, and a Golden Age Club badge, and a slip of paper identifying him as a member of the American Legion. A young man, eyeless behind space-age sunglasses, studied the little dossier on the thigh next to his. Whoa, he said. Say, you must belong to everything. The old man arranged his cards meticulously and said nothing. How come they dragging in somebody like you? The sunglasses blew smoke all over the old man's cards. Them police must be getting desperate. I'm here in violation of my constitutional rights, the old man said with sudden anger. Well, they're not going to believe that. You better think up something else. A hand reached for one of the cards. Hey, what's this mean, Golden Age? The old man snatched the card and put it back on his thigh. Those little cards are not going to do you any good. They're going to throw you in jail anyway. They throw everybody in jail. You think so? The old man asked the cloud of smoke. Sure. A new cloud floated up. How come you're here, man? I don't know. You don't know? Well, that's crazy. You got to be here for something. Plenty of time they're picking up colored people just for nothing, but mister, you got to be here for something. I really don't know, the old man said glumly. I was just standing in a crowd in front of D.H. Holmes. And you lifted somebody's wallet? No, I called the policeman a name. What'd you call him? Communist. Communist? If I call a police a communist, my ass would be in Angola right now for sure. I like to call him one of the mothers a communist, though. Like this afternoon, I was standing around Woolworth. Some cat steals a bag of cashews for the nut house and starts screaming like she'd been stabbed. Next thing, the floor walker grabbed me, and then the police motherfucker dragging me off. Man ain't got no chance. Nobody finding those cashews on me, but that police still dragging me off. I think that floor walker was a communist. Me, mother. The old man cleared his throat and played with his cards. They'll probably let you go, the sunglasses said. Me, they're probably going to give me a little talk, think it scare me, even though they know I ain't got no cashews. Probably going to try and prove I got the nuts. Probably buy a bag, slip it in my pocket. Woolworth probably try to send me up for life. The man seemed quite resigned and blew out a new cloud of blue smoke that enveloped him and the old man and the little cards. Then he said to himself, I wonder who lifted them nuts, probably that floor walker himself. The policeman summoned the old man up to the desk in the center of the room where a sergeant was seated. The patrolman who had arrested him was standing there. What's your name? The sergeant asked the old man. Claude Robichaud, he answered, and put his little cards on the desk before the sergeant. The sergeant looked over the cards and said, Patrolman Mancuso here says you resisted arrest and called him a communist. I didn't mean it, the old man said sadly, noticing how fiercely the sergeant was handling his little cards. Mancuso says you says all policemen are communists. Ooh-wee, the man said across the room. Will you shut up, Jones? Okay, Jones answered. I'll get to you next. Say, I didn't call nobody no communist, Jones said. I've been framed by that floor walker in Woolworth. I don't even like cashews. Shut your mouth up. Okay, Jones said brightly and blew a great thundercloud of smoke. I didn't mean anything I said, Mr. Robichaud told the sergeant. I just got nervous. I got carried away. This policeman was trying to arrest a poor boy waiting for his mama by Holmes. What? The sergeant turned to the wan little policeman. What were you trying to do? He wasn't a boy, Mancuso said. He was a big, fat man dressed funny. He looked like a suspicious character. I was just trying to make a routine check, and he started to resist. To tell you the truth, he looked like a big pervert. A pervert, huh? The sergeant asked greedily. Yeah, Mancuso said with new confidence. A great big pervert. How big? Biggest I ever saw in my whole life, Mancuso said, stretching his arms as if he were describing a fishing catch. The sergeant's eyes shone. First thing I spotted was his green hunting cap he was wearing. Jones listened in attentive detachment somewhere within his cloud. Well, what happened, Mancuso? How come he's not standing here before me? He got away. This woman came out of the store and got everything mixed up, and she and him run around the corner of the quarter. Ah, 2 quarter characters, the sergeant said, suddenly enlightened. No, sir, the old man interrupted. She was really his mama, a nice, pretty lady. I seen them downtown before. This policeman frightened her. Oh, listen, Mancuso, the sergeant said. You're the only guy in the force who tried to wrest somebody away from his mother. Why did you bring in Grandpa here? Bring up his family and tell them to come get him. Please, Mr. Robichaud pleaded, don't do that. My daughter's busy with her kids. I've never been arrested in my whole life. She can't come get me. What are my grandchildren going to think? They're all studying with the sisters. Get his daughter's number, Mancuso. That'll teach him to call us communists. Please, Mr. Robichaud was in tears. My grandchildren respect me. Jesus Christ. Trying to arrest a kid with his mama, bringing in somebody's grandpa. Get the hell out of here, Mancuso, and take Grandpa with you. If you ever arrest suspicious characters, we'll fix you up. Yes, sir, Mancuso said weakly, leading the weeping man away. Ooh-wee, Jones said from the secrecy of his cloud. Twilight was settling around the Night of Joy bar. Outside, Bourbon Street was beginning to light up. Neon signs flashed off and on, reflecting in the streets, dampened by the light mist that had been falling steadily for some time. The taxis bringing the evening's first customers, Midwestern tourists and conventioneers, made slight splashing sounds in the cold dusk. A few other customers were in the Night of Joy, a man who ran his finger along a racing form, a depressed blonde who seemed connected with the bar in some capacity, and an elegantly dressed young man who chain-smoked Salems and drank frozen daiquiris in gulps. Ignatius, we better go, Mrs. Riley said, and belched. What? Ignatius bellowed. We must stay to watch the corruption. It's already beginning to set in. The elegant young man spilled his daiquiri on his bottle green velvet jacket. Hey, bartender, Mrs. Riley called. Get a rag. One of the customers just spilled their drink. That's quite all right, darling, the young man said angrily. He arched an eyebrow at Ignatius and his mother. I think I'm in the wrong bar anyway. Don't get upset, honey, Mrs. Riley counseled. What's that you're drinking? It looks like a pineapple snowball. Even if I described it to you, I doubt whether you'd understand what it is. How dare you talk to my dear beloved mother like that? Oh, hush, you big thing. Just look at my jacket, the young man snapped. It's totally grotesque. Okay, now, let's be friends, Mrs. Riley said through foamy lips. We got enough bombs and things already. And so your son seems to delight in dropping them, I must say. Okay, you two, this is the kind of place where everybody ought to have some fun. Mrs. Riley smiled at the young man. Let me buy you another drink, babe, just for the one you spilled, and I think I'll take me another Dixie. I really must run, the young man sighed. Thanks anyway. On a night like this, Mrs. Riley asked, don't pay no mind to what Ignatius says. Why don't you stay and see the show? The young man rolled his eyes heavenward. Yeah, the blonde broke her silence. See some ass and tits. Mother, Ignatius said coldly, I do believe that you are encouraging these preposterous people. Well, you're the one who wanted to stay, Ignatius. Yes, I did want to stay as an observer. I am not especially anxious to mingle. Honey, to tell you the truth, I can't listen to that story about that bus no more tonight. You already told it 4 times since we got here. Ignatius looked hurt. I hardly suspected I was boring you. After all, the bus ride was one of the more formative experiences of my life. As a mother, you should be interested in the traumas that have created my worldview. What's with the bus? The blonde asked, moving to the stool next to Ignatius. My name's Darlene. I like good stories. You got a spicy one? The bartender slammed the beer and the daiquiri down just as the bus was starting off on its journeys in the vortex. Here, have a clean glass, the bartender snarled at Mrs. Riley. Ain't that nice? Hey, Ignatius, I just got a clean glass. But her son was too preoccupied with his arrival in Baton Rouge. You know, sweetheart, Mrs. Riley said to the young man, me and my boy was in trouble today. The police tried to arrest him. Oh, my dear, policemen are always so adamant, aren't they? Yeah, and Ignatius got him his master's degree and all. What in the world was he doing? Nothing, he's just standing waiting for his poor dear mama. His outfit is a little bizarre. I thought he was a performer of some sort when I first came in, although I tried not to imagine the nature of his act. I kept on telling him about his clothes, but he won't listen. Mrs. Riley looked at the back of her son's flannel shirt and at the hair curling down the back of his neck. That's sure pretty, that jacket you got. Oh, this? The young man asked, feeling the velvet on his sleeve. I don't mind telling you it cost a fortune. I found it in a dear little shop in the village. You don't look like you're from the country. Oh my, the young man sighed and lit a Salem with a great click of his lighter. I meant Greenwich Village in New York, sweetie. And by the way, where did you ever get that hat? It's truly fantastic. Oh, Lord, I had this since Ignatius made his first communion. Would you consider selling it? How come? I'm a dealer in used clothing. I'll give you $10 for it. Come on. For this? 15. Really? Mrs. Riley removed the hat. Sure, honey. The young man opened his wallet and gave Mrs. Riley 3 $5 bills. Draining his daiquiri glass, he stood up and said, Now I really must run. So soon? It's been perfectly delightful meeting you. Take care out in the cold and the wet. The young man smiled, placed the hat carefully beneath his trench coat, and left the bar. The radar patrol, Ignatius was telling Darlene, is obviously rather foolproof. It seems that the cab driver and I were making small dots on their screens all the way from Baton Rouge. You was on radar, Darlene yawned. You just think of that. Ignatius, we gotta go now, Mrs. Riley said. I'm hungry. She turned toward him and knocked her beer bottle to the floor where it broke into a spray of brown, jagged glass. Mother, are you making a scene? Ignatius asked irritably. Can't you see that Miss Darlene and I are speaking? You have some cakes with you. Eat those. You're always complaining that you never go anywhere. I would have imagined that you would be enjoying a night on the town. Ignatius was back on radar, so Mrs. Riley reached into her boxes and ate a brownie. Like one? She asked the bartender. They're nice. I got some nice wine cakes, too. The bartender pretended to be looking for something on his shelves. I smell wine cakes, Darlene cried, looking past Ignatius. Have one, honey, Mrs. Riley said. I think that I shall have one, too, Ignatius said. I imagine that they taste rather good with brandy. Mrs. Riley spread the box out on the bar. Even the man with the racing form agreed to take a macaroon. bought these nice wine cakes, lady?" Darlene asked Mrs. Riley. "They're nice and juicy." "Over by Holmes' Sugar they got a good selection, plenty variety." "They are rather tasty," Ignatius conceded, setting out his flabby pink tongue over his mustache to hunt for crumbs. "I think that I shall have a macaroon or two. I have always found coconut to be good roughage." He picked around in the box purposefully. "Me, I always like some good cake after I finish eating," Mrs. Riley told the bartender, who turned his back on her. "I bet you cook good, huh?" Darlene asked. "Mother doesn't cook," Ignatius said dogmatically. "She burns." "I used to cook when I was married," Darlene told him. "I sort of used to, a lot of that canned stuff, although I like that Spanish rice they got and that spaghetti with the tomato gravy." "Canned food is a perversion," Ignatius said. "I suspect that it is ultimately very damaging to the soul." "Lord, my elbow's acting up again," Mrs. Riley sighed. "Please, I am speaking," her son told her. "I never eat canned food. I did once, and I could feel my intestines starting to atrophy." "You got a good education," Darlene said. "Ignatius graduated from college, then he stuck around there for 4 more years to get him a master's degree." "Ignatius graduated smart." "Graduated smart," Ignatius repeated with some pique. "Please define your terms. Exactly what do you mean by graduated smart?" "Don't talk to your mama like that," Darlene said. "Oh, he treats me bad sometimes," Mrs. Riley said loudly and began to cry. "You just don't know. When I think all I've done for that boy." "Mother, what are you saying?" "You don't appreciate me." "Stop that right now. I'm afraid you've had too much beer." "You treat me like garbage." "I've been good," Mrs. Riley sobbed. She turned to Darlene. "I spent all his poor Grandma Riley's insurance money to keep him in college for 8 years, and since then all he's done is lay around the house watching television." "You ought to be ashamed," Darlene said to Ignatius. "A big man like you, look at your poor mama." Mrs. Riley had collapsed, sobbing on the bar, one hand clenched around her beer glass. "This is ridiculous. Mother, stop that." "If I knew you was so cruel, mister, I wouldn't have listened to your crazy story about that Greyhound bus." "Get up, Mother." "You look like a big crazy man anyway," Darlene said. "I should have known. Just look how that poor woman's crying." Darlene tried to push Ignatius from his stool, but sent him crashing into his mother, who suddenly stopped crying and gasped, "My elbow!" "What's going on here?" a woman asked from the padded chartreuse leatherette door of the bar. She was a statuesque woman nearing middle age, her fine body covered with a black leather overcoat that glistened with mist. "I leave this place for a few hours to go shopping, and look what happens. I gotta be here every minute, I guess, to watch out you people don't ruin my investment." "Just 2 drunks," the bartender said. "I've been giving them the cold shoulder since they come in, but they've been sticking like flies." "But you, Darlene," the woman said, "you're big friends with them, huh? Playing games on the stools with these 2 characters?" "This guy's been mistreating his mama," Darlene explained. "Mothers, we got a mother in here now? Business already stinks." "I beg your pardon," Ignatius said. The woman ignored him and looked at the broken and empty cake box on the bar, saying, "Somebody's been having a picnic in here, goddammit. I already told you people about rats and ants." "I beg your pardon," Ignatius said again. "My mother is present." "That's just my luck to have this crap broken all over here just when I'm looking for a janitor." The woman looked at the bartender. "Get these 2 out." "Yes, Miss Lee." "Don't you worry," Mrs. Riley said. "We're leaving." "We certainly are," Ignatius added, lumbering towards the door, leaving his mother behind to climb off her stool. "Hurry along, Mother. This woman looks like a Nazi commandant. She may strike us." "Wait," Mrs. Lee screamed, grabbing Ignatius's sleeve. "How much do these characters owe?" $8, the bartender said. "This is highway robbery. You will hear from our attorneys." Mrs. Riley paid with 2 of the bills the young man had given her, and as she swayed past Miss Lee, she said, "We know when we're not wanted. We can take our trade elsewheres." "Good," Miss Lee answered. "Beat it. Trade from people like you is the kiss of death." After the padded door had closed behind the Rileys, Miss Lee said, "I never liked mothers, not even my own." "My mother was a whore," the man with the racing form said, not looking up from his paper. "Mothers are full of shit," Mrs. Lee observed, and took off her leather coat. "Now, let's you and me have a little talk, Darlene." Outside, Mrs. Riley took her son's arm for support, but as much as they tried, they moved forward very slowly, although they seemed to move sideward more easily. Their walking had developed a pattern. 3 quick steps to the left, Pause. 3 quick steps to the right. Pause. That was a terrible woman, Mrs. Riley said. A negation of all human qualities, Ignatius added. By the way, how far is the car? I'm very tired. Oh, St. Anne, honey, just a few blocks. You left your hat in the bar. Oh, I sold it to that young man. You sold it? Why? Did you ask me whether I wanted it to be sold? I was very attached to that hat. Oh, I'm sorry, Ignatius, I didn't know you liked it so much. You never said nothing about it. I had an unspoken attachment to it. It was a contact with my childhood, a link with the past. But he gave me $15, Ignatius. Please, don't talk about it anymore. The whole business is sacrilegious. Goodness knows what degenerate uses he will find for that hat. Do you have the $15 on you? I still got 7 left. Then why don't we stop and eat something? Ignatius pointed to the cart at the corner. It was shaped like a hot dog on wheels. I believe that they vend foot-long hot dogs. Hot dogs? Honey, in all this rain and cold, we gonna stand outside and eat weenies? It's a thought. No, Mrs. Riley said with a somewhat beery courage. Let's get home. I wouldn't eat nothing out of one of them dirty wagons anyway. They all operated by a bunch of bums. If you insist, Ignatius said, pouting, although I am rather hungry, and you have, after all, just sold a memento of my childhood for 30 pieces of silver, so to speak. They continued their little pattern of steps along the wet flagstones of Bourbon Street. On St. Anne, they found the old Plymouth easily. Its high roof stood above all the other cars, its best feature. The Plymouth was always easy to find in supermarket parking lots. Mrs. Riley climbed the curb twice, trying to force the car out of the parking place, and left the impression of a 1946 Plymouth bumper in the hood of the Volkswagen in the rear. My nerves, Ignatius said. He was slumped down in the seat so that just the top of his green hunting cap appeared in the window, looking like the tip of a promising watermelon. From the rear, where he always sat, having read somewhere that the seat next to the driver was the most dangerous, he watched his mother's wild and inexpert shifting with disapproval. I suspect that you have effectively demolished the small car that someone innocently parked behind this bus. You had better succeed in getting out of this spot before its owner happens along. Shut up, Ignatius. You're making me nervous, Mrs. Riley said, looking up at the hunting cap in the rearview mirror. Ignatius got up on the seat and looked out of the rear window. That car is a total wreck. Your driver's license, if you do indeed have one, will doubtlessly be revoked. I certainly wouldn't blame them. Lay down there and take a nap, his mother said as the car jerked back again. Do you think I could sleep now? I'm afraid for my life. Are you sure that you're turning the wheel the right way? Suddenly the car leaped out of the parking spot and skidded across the wet street into a post supporting a wrought iron balcony. The post fell away to one side and the Plymouth crunched against the building. Oh my God! Ignatius screamed from the rear. What have you done now? Call a priest! I don't think that we're injured, Mother. However, you have just ruined my stomach for the next few days. Ignatius rolled down one of the rear windows and studied the fender that was pressed against the wall. We shall need a new headlight on this side, I imagine. What are we going to do? If I were driving, I would put the auto in reverse and back gracefully away from the scene. Someone will certainly press charges. The people who own this wreck of a building have been waiting for an opportunity like this for years. They probably spread grease on the street after nightfall, hoping that motorists like you will spin toward their hovel, he belched. My digestion has been destroyed. I think that I am beginning to bloat. Mrs. Riley shifted the worn gears and inched slowly backward. As the car moved, the splintering of the wood sounded over their heads, a splintering that changed into splitting of boards and scraping of metal. Then the balcony was falling in large sections, thundering on the roof of the car with the dull, heavy thud of grenades. The car, like a stoned human, stopped moving, and a piece of wrought iron decoration shattered a rear window. Honey, are you okay? Mrs. Riley asked wildly after what seemed to be the final bombardment. Ignatius made a gagging sound. The blue and yellow eyes were watering. Say something, Ignatius, his mother pleaded, turning around just in time to see Ignatius stick his head out of a window and vomit down the side of the dented car. Patrolman Mancuso was walking slowly down Chartres Street, dressed in ballet tights and a yellow sweater, a costume which the sergeant said would enable him to bring in genuine bona fide suspicious characters instead of grandfathers and boys waiting for their mothers. The costume was the sergeant's punishment. He told Mancuso that from now on he would be strictly responsible for bringing in suspicious characters, that police headquarters had a costume wardrobe that would permit Mancuso to be a new character every day. Forlornly, Patrolman Mancuso had put on the tights before the sergeant, who had pushed him out of the precinct and told him to shape up or get off the force. In the 2 hours that he had been cruising the French Quarter, he had captured no one. Twice, things had looked hopeful. He had stopped a man wearing a beret and asked for a cigarette, but the man had threatened to have him arrested. Then he accosted a young man in a trench coat who was wearing a lady's hat, but the young man slapped him across the face and dashed away. As Patrolman Mancuso walked down Chartres, rubbing his cheek, which still smarted from the slap, he heard what seemed to be an explosion. Hoping that a suspicious character had just thrown a bomb or shot himself, he ran around the corner onto St. Anne and saw the green hunting cap emitting vomit among the ruins.